Hi everybody, my name's Kerry Bates and I'm sitting in my study in Australia, in Melbourne, in a suburb called Ormond, and it's a school day but we're all working from home like you are. And I'm a teacher and I met Miss Duncan when I was on a teaching exchange in Vancouver in Canada. And she asked me to read you a chapter from a book. I've never read this book and I've never read this chapter, so here goes. Chapter 20, Boom, Boom, Boom. Ben couldn't believe what Granny had just said. There was no way he would risk stealing the crown jewels only to put them back the very next night. But they're worth millions, billions even, he complained. I know. So we'd definitely get caught if we tried to sell them, replied Granny. But, no buts, boy. We put them back the next night. Do you know how I evaded prison all these years? I never sold a thing. I just did it for the buzz. But you kept them though, said Ben. Even if you didn't sell them, you've got all those jewels in your biscuit tin. Granny blinked. Well, I was young and foolish then, she said. I have learned since that it is wrong to steal, and you need to understand that too. She gave him a fierce look. Ben squirmed. I do, of course I do. It's a brilliant plan you've put together, Ben. Honestly, it is. But those jewels don't belong to us, do they? No, said Ben. No, they don't. He felt a tiny bit ashamed now that he'd been so horrified at the idea of giving back the jewels. And don't forget that every policeman in the country, maybe even the world, will be looking for the crown jewels. They'll have all of Scotland Yard after us. If we were found with them, we'd be thrown into prison for the rest of our lives. That might not be so long for me, but for you it could be 70 or 80 years. You're right, said Ben. And the Queen seems like such a nice old dear. We're around the same age, actually. I'd hate to upset her. Me too, murmured Ben. He'd seen the Queen on the news loads of times, and she seemed like a nice old lady, smiling and waving at everybody from the back of her giant pram. Let's just do it for the thrill. Agreed? Agreed, said Ben. When can we do it? It'll have to be a Friday night when Mum and Dad take me to stay at yours. Did the doctor say when you'll be out of hospital? Yes, he did. He said I could leave at any time. Fantastic! But we need to do it very soon. How about next Friday? Isn't that too soon? Not at all. Your plan seems very well thought out, Ben. Thank you, said Ben, beaming. It was the first time ever that he felt that he had made a grown-up proud of him. When I get out of here, I'll get on to pinching the equipment we need. Now run along, Ben, and I will see you next Friday night at the usual time. Ben pulled back the curtain. Mr. Parker, Granny's nosy neighbour, was standing right there. Startled, Ben took a couple of steps back towards the bed and quickly shoved Plumbing weakly up the back of his jumper. What are you doing here? Asked Ben. Hoping to see me take a bed bath, no doubt, said Granny. Ben chuckled. Mr. Parker scrambled for words. No, Matron, hollered Granny. Wait, said Mr. Parker, panicking. I'm sure I heard one of you talking about the crown jewels. It was too late. The matron, who was an unusually tall lady with very big feet, clomped down the ward at speed. Yes, asked the matron. Is something the matter? This man was spying at me through the curtains, said Granny. Were you? Demanded matron, eyeballing Mr. Parker. Well, I heard that they were, whined Mr. Parker. Last week he spied on my Granny doing her naked yoga, offered Ben. Matron's face turned puce with horror. Get out of my ward at once, you filthy little swine, she screamed. Humiliated, Mr. Parker backed away from the terrifying matron and scuttled out of the ward. He paused at the swing doors and yelled back to Granny and Ben, You haven't seen the last of me, before rushing out. Please let me know if that man comes back, said Matron, her face returning to a more normal shade. I will, replied Granny, before Matron returned to her duties. He could have heard everything, hissed Ben. Maybe, replied Granny, but I think Matron scared him off for good. I hope so. Ben was very worried about this unfortunate development. Do you still want to go through with it? Asked the old lady. Ben had that feeling you have when you're on a roller coaster and it's slowly making its way up the track. You want to get off.